Well, thank you again for joining. I am again really happy to see you here. It's 3 after 12, but we're going to get started because we have a lot to cover today, and I want to make sure we have time for questions, and then we have time to get through all of our slides. So I will start by introducing myself, then I will hand it over to Emily to introduce herself and get started with the first bit of the presentation. So if you don't know me, my name is Jennifer Barnes. I am the Supplier Diversity and Sustainability Manager for the university, which means I am responsible for tracking and increasing our spend with diverse suppliers, as well as making sure that we're purchasing in a sustainable way. So you can reach me. My email and information is at the end of this presentation, or you can just search for me on the Purchase, Pay, and Travel website. My information will be there if you have questions for me following this session. And Emily, I will hand it over to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Potosny. I use she, her pronouns. I just joined the university in January over in the Office of Sustainability, where my role is the Sustainability Engagement Manager. And yeah, I'm happy to connect with any of you after the presentation as well. My contact information will be there, and got a couple opportunities for folks to connect as well throughout the rest of Earth Month, which we'll talk about in a bit. And Jen, were you going to do the definition on the first slide? Or should I go into that one? I can go into it. Yeah. So, yeah. So the university has its definition of sustainability as balancing equity, environment, and economics so that current and future generations can thrive, which for us as a higher education institution is, especially poignant since that is our mission to educate the next generation as well. So you could go to the next slide there. So the Pitt Sustainability Plan was released in 2018 and was written by a committee of faculty, students, and staff, and that's now become the Chancellor's Advisory Council on Sustainability. So the plan itself has three key themes: stewardship, which really focuses on the impact of our operations and being as sustainable as possible in that impact. Exploration, which focuses on how we can incorporate sustainability into our academic mission, and then community and culture, which is how we bring everyone along and engaging in this process, both within the university community and then in the broader Pittsburgh and global community as well. So within each of these themes, there are 5 impact areas and 68 distinct goals within all of those themes together. And in those 68 goals, we've got different timelines and different metrics that we're hoping to achieve. You can go to the next slide, Jen. So this is a little bit more about the different impact areas that we have. And our topic today, sustainable purchasing, cuts across, a lot of these different themes. And if you want to read up on the sustainability plan a little bit more, you can go to the next slide there again. So we actually just released our 2018 to 2022 Pitt Sustainability Plan Progress Report. So you can follow up and see how far we're doing, how we're measuring up against those 68 different goals. I just put a link in the chat, and you can also scan that QR code there. It's a hefty read, but it's broken out into different sections. So if there's a particular area that interests you, you can go to the link there and pick out different pages on the website that go into each of those individual impact areas. But today, go to the next one. Today, we are talking about purchasing, which, like I mentioned, ties into several different impact areas. But this morning, I'm going to home in on materials and waste. And in the materials and waste section, Pitt does have a few distinct goals. First is that we aim to reduce landfill waste 25% by 2030 from a 2007 baseline. And this goal can be met in 2 ways. First, by reducing the total waste that we produce, reducing the total tonnage, and second, by diverting waste from the landfill. And we can do that through several different initiatives, such as, you can go to the next slide. So we've got recycling on campus that we've had since 2015, single stream recycling. And we added commercial composting in 7 buildings around campus in 2019. And then next slide. And then we've also implemented several specialty diversion and recycling programs to divert waste from the landfill around campus. So I'm going to drop another link in the chat here, and that's to a map of our different drop-off locations for these specialty diversion programs around campus. So we have an empty inkjet and laser toner cartridges recycling program. You can mail those for free to surplus property at 7500 Thomas Boulevard or drop them off at the locations around campus. We have battery recycling tubes at locations around campus for unwanted cell phones, iPods, and batteries. Just make sure you put tape on either side of the battery terminal for safety reasons. We also have medication recycling, disposal, where you can take expired or unused medication to public safety or the pharmacy over at Nordenberg Hall. And in 2020, we launched textile recycling to help divert textiles from the landfill. Textiles actually make up 6.3% of the US waste stream. So it's a pretty significant thing to try and tackle. So despite limited access due to COVID, we actually diverted over 7,800 pounds of textiles from the landfill. And Pitt now has 28 different collection locations around campus. And these bins are really for unusable textiles, things like old shoes, torn sheets, stained clothing, single socks, that sort of thing, things that you wouldn't want to donate for reuse. And like I mentioned, you can find the different drop-off locations on that map, which will soon be embedded on our website. But in the meantime, those locations are listed on the zero waste section of the Pitt Sustainability site. And you can go to the next. So while waste diversion is an important part of our operations and that waste reduction goal, the first method I mentioned of reducing waste, reducing overall tonnage, is really the most impactful in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So this inverted triangle is known as the hierarchy of waste, and it demonstrates the highest and best strategies for managing waste based on overall impact. So as you can see, source reduction up at the top is considered the best strategy, followed by reusing the materials and items that you already have, repairing what you have, and then further down, we see the diversion strategies of recycling and compost, and that's followed by what's commonly referred to as waste to energy, or incinerators that double as power plants, also landfills that capture methane, and lastly, landfilling. So go to the next slide there. And so here are a couple of best practices to keep in order to stop waste before it starts, reducing it at the source. So you can keep an inventory, whether that's of supplies you regularly order or for what you've ordered in the past for a particular program or event. This can help you take stock of what you already have and also give you a sense of what was maybe over-ordered in the past to help you right-size your orders and be aware of what you already have. If you do order any merch or swag for particular programs or schools or events, you should try and choose to put a logo or name on that will stand the test of time. And similarly, not printing dates or years on your materials can enable you to reuse them or even to elevate them as like a limited edition item in future years or at future events. You can keep supplies for reuse by setting an area in your office space that everyone knows. That's where you keep like over ordered supplies that anybody can pick up at any time. You can also participate in a decluttering or waste reduction event like Clean and Swap, which is Pitt's annual event where offices bring out their unwanted supplies and they can shop, quote unquote, among other offices drop-offs, so pick up for free anything that you might need. So this year, our event is on May 17th and 18th over the O'Hara Student Center Ballroom. You can scan that QR code there and find out a little bit more information at this link here in the chat. And then at the end of that day, all unwanted supplies are donated through Pitt Surplus and a couple of nonprofit partners that we work with, Global Links and the Education Partnership. And then lastly, by switching or choosing to use durables and reusables wherever you can and avoiding single-use products, it'll also help you to reduce waste overall. So you can go to the next slide, Jen. So in this presentation, we're going to focus on some strategies that Pitt has implemented towards the absolute best practice when it comes to waste, which is eliminating it altogether through a circular economy approach. And so, this is kind of to address the fact that source reduction can only go so far. we need things. We need materials and supplies to work, to operate, and to fulfill our academic mission. So eliminating waste altogether doesn't mean an end to purchasing. Rather, it means we need a shift in where our goods come from. So here we see a model that illustrates our current linear consumption model in orange. So in this model, non-renewable materials are mined and harvested for manufacture, sold in a market, and disposed of by the consumer. So in this linear model, energy is consumed and ultimately lost on a massive scale. And that has huge climate impacts and climate justice impacts, especially for those living in environmental justice communities near manufacture and disposal, and the global south, where much of our waste is still shipped. However, out on the outer edges to the left and the right of that linear model, you see the potential for a different circular economy. So this is one in which non-renewable materials don't need to be mined and harvested with as much intensity or at all, because the materials are manufactured in such a way that they can be collected for regenerative use, which keeps that material energy in circulation. And that's more with the methods you see on green on the left. And then on the right, you see some of our existing and admittedly more carbon intensive processes to keep that energy in circulation, to keep that material in circulation. And that includes things like maintenance and repair, reuse and redistribution, and recycling or remanufacturing. And Pitt actually has a new PhD program where the slide came from, which is the Circular Economy program with Covestro. And in that program, they're really focusing on these methods in the green on the left and some innovations on the regenerative side of the circular economy. But for the circular economy model to work, there have to be mechanisms in place for manufacturers to collect, refurbish, repair, and redistribute the goods they manufacture. You can go to the next slide, Jen. And so as part of Pitt's sustainability plan, Pitt seeks to promote that circular economy in practice through this goal here, through establishing procedures, policies, practices, and educational tools to reduce the quantity and environmental impact of the materials that enter and exit the university. So we do that through, in part, our vendor contracts, which we'll talk about today. So Pitt's working to establish programs that help to close the loop for the products that we use on campus, including some vendor take-back initiatives. And by participating in these programs, you can help the university not only reduce waste and minimize greenhouse gas emissions associated with those products, but you're also supporting a vision for a future economy where manufacturers are responsible for the products they produce. So we can go to the next slide there. So for a couple of examples, Pitt does have a goal to procure healthier products and materials that will improve our indoor environmental quality in Pitt buildings. You can go to the next one there. And so here's just one example of a supplier-led sustainability initiative from one of our contracted suppliers, Supra and ODP. And so within that system, you can search for greener cleaning supplies that have achieved Green Seal, Cradle to Cradle, AP non-toxic, Safer Choice, and lots of other third-party sustainability and environmental health certifications. And you can go to the next one after that. And another vendor contract that's been set up with a closed loop in mind is our compost program. So Pitt has been monitoring compost collection on campus since 2019 towards our goal to divert 50% of food waste by 2025 through composting. And next slide there. And so Pitt's compost is hauled and composted by AgriCycle, which is a commercial composter located in Washington, PA. So AgriCycle uses a windrow composting process that's pictured here to compost material that they collect, and that material is then screened to several different sizes and sold commercially and retail for garden and agricultural fertilizer. And actually some of the primary buyers of AgriCycle's finished product are the Pittsburgh Zoo, Pittsburgh Botanic Garden, and PNC Park, who are also an AgriCycle customer, which makes them a true local circular economy example there. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer, who's going to go into how you can make these purchases and participate in the sustainable and diverse purchasing programs that Pitt has been working on.
Thank you, Emily. So as I mentioned, I am responsible for trying to track and increase our spend with diverse suppliers. And a lot of you on the call today, and those of you who will watch the video, can purchase directly. Some of you are able to purchase through PantherExpress, have the ability to do that. Some of you make requests for purchases, and some of you have sat on some of the committees for university-wide contracts. And so I want to really address all levels of this, because I think what's important is that we, each of us as a member of the Pitt community, understand where we can fit in, and then also understand what the university is doing as a whole to make sure that our contracts and what we purchase as a whole are done in a sustainable way. There are a plethora of examples, so I'm just going to focus on a few that either I've been involved in or that are coming up on the purchasing side. So in addition to the fact that not all staff participate in major campus-wide supplier-led or supplier-focused purchasing contracting goals. The other thing that I want us to keep in mind is that purchasing on contract is a really easy way for you to be sure that you're participating in a way that maybe you might not be aware of. So what I'll talk about today is some of the examples, and you can kind of see what the university has put in place, why it's important to purchase on contract, meaning purchasing with our Pitt contracted suppliers, and why we encourage that. One of the reasons is because a lot of this has been negotiated upfront. So the first example that I want to share is about our food service. So the Compass Group replaced Sodexo, and I believe that their contract began in 2020 as our food services provider. So that's massive, right? They serve over 30,000 meals per day on campus, just the Oakland campus, and that produces a lot of waste. So Emily talked about our composting goals and our waste diversion. A lot of that has to do with the food. So part of Compass's agreement, part of their contract, is written in goals for that waste diversion, written in goals for their compliance with a couple of different initiatives. One of them is the Cool Food Challenge or the Real Food Pledge. Both of those speak to sourcing in different ways. One of them speaks to where our food comes from. So Compass is responsible for tracking if we get pickles that are served in the eatery, where did those cucumbers come from? Where were the pickles packaged? How do they make their way to Pitt? Can we consider them a local purchase? Or even the fisheries or farms that our fruits and vegetables and meat come from. The goal is to purchase within a certain diameter, you know what I'm trying to say, a certain distance from campus to make sure that we can really count that as being local. And so that's what we would consider to be real food. The cool food has a lot to do with the energy that goes into producing an item or a meal. So we all have heard a little conversation about why eating plant-based diets is better for the environment. So one of these goals is to make sure that plants are the center of the plate, and we're prioritizing and featuring plant-based items and vegetarian and vegan options at the center of the plate in order to prioritize those in our students' diets. So that's just a part of Compass's goals, and it's written into their contract for them to have to comply with that. Another university-wide agreement is with Grainger. So they provide most of our MRO, which is maintenance, repair, and operations supplies. So all of the toilet paper, cleaning products that are done at the university scale. So they are in Grainger's agreement. I remember in the RFP actually wrote in requests for at least 50% of whatever products Grainger offered in their catalog for cleaning and MRO purchases to be quote unquote green. So to have some type of eco label. So that could be the cleaning supplies that Emily mentioned, but it also could be where the paper is sourced for the toilet paper or paper towels that we buy. So the Grainger agreement has that language in it. Readers also agreed to participate in reduction of their packaging, and then also optimizing their deliveries to campus. So not just having several trucks all day, but better scheduling those deliveries and optimizing those deliveries so we see less of a presence of their vehicles on campus on a daily basis. As of January 1st, the Fisher Scientific Agreement was renewed for an additional 7 years. And I think excuse me, a lot of folks on campus purchase from Fisher or Fisher companies for their scientific research, and clinical purposes. One of the most exciting things that Fisher's agreed to was to phase out styrofoam. So they have established or created an innovative styrofoam replacement, which is a really interesting corrugated paper box system that can also keep items just as cold as styrofoam. So we should see those come on campus and replacing styrofoam in this fall as they go through their own supply chain process to switch out the old boxes for the new boxes. That's something we heard a lot from our customers and our end users. All of you all on campus who purchased from Fisher really wanting to see that styrofoam be phased out. So as a part of their new agreement, not only did Fisher agree to helping us with that goal, but they've helped with additional support for other sustainable projects on campus. So as those are launched over the next year or two, you'll hear a lot of Fisher sponsored or Fisher supported sustainability initiatives. So those are things that we are able to negotiate at the contract level when we're looking for a new supplier. The other thing that I want to mention, and I'll come back to this a little bit later, is that another thing that we asked from Fisher is that they do a better job of updating their eco-label information on their punch out. So if you do use Fisher Scientific and are searching for specific products and want to sort by like an eco category, right now it's not as easy to do that. Part of their agreement with us was to update that punch out system to make it an easier search tool for folks on campus. So upcoming contracts that I can't go into too much detail on, but I really do want to touch on is our waste contract that's currently out for RFP, and we'll begin having conversations with waste haulers. We'll be talking with AgriCycle and other composters that are going to end up bidding, excuse me, on composting services on campus. Obviously, that's a very, very heavy sustainability focus area. So we're really excited to see some innovative solutions from waste and composters and other specialty recycling companies. And then endpoint computing is something that not everybody will think about. When you start at Pitt, you typically will get like a Dell computer. So Dell is our current supplier for endpoint computing right now. And because we're going through the RFP, we're having conversations with Dell and other responders to talk about what we want to see from them, what kind of end of life, what kind of recycling, are their devices EPEAT Gold, which is, the eco label for electronic devices. We want to see at least EPEAT Gold on campus. So we're having those negotiations behind the scenes so that when those products are available to Pitt, you can already feel a little bit more comfortable that we've made those demands and requests of our Pitt contracted suppliers. So this is, I wanted to feature two specific products, not promoting them in any way, but I just want to highlight them to make you aware of some innovative, sustainable products that are available to the scientific community in particular. So the first is polycarbon, which some of you may have heard of, but they are sort of a Pitt startup. They were started by Pitt medical students who observed the amount of waste in the lab space of pipettes and pipette tip boxes. And have decided to create a circular economy and a company to focus on that in particular. So a lot of you, if you do any lab work, you'll see these pipette tip boxes that are just disposed of. The pipette tips and the tubes are really, really high quality plastics that are generally just either downcycled or incinerated because of their use. But polycarbon wanted to recapture that really high quality plastic and reuse it, melt it down into pellets and create new boxes and tubes. So if that is something that your lab is interested in participating in, you can reach out to me for more information. I can show you how to find the products either on the Fisher, or there's a couple of other scientific suppliers in the punch out that carry their items. And then we're also working with them to schedule some pipette tip collection events. One of which we're hoping will be at Clean and Swap that Emily mentioned. And then your lab can bring the pipette tip boxes there for polycarbon to upcycle them into new pipette tip boxes. And then the second one that I want to talk about is actually a diverse woman-owned business. We buy a lot of gloves. Now we can buy gloves from like the MRO maintenance, repair, cleaning operations, all the way to like the clinical or research side. So SW Safety products have like one of the most innovative technologies that I've seen in this glove space. So they have a technology called EcoTech, which basically is a proprietary formula in which they use to create their gloves, which means that those gloves will break down 92.6% over 2.5 years in a normal condition. So it doesn't have to be composted or in a specific biodegradable facility. They can just be even incinerated or just thrown in in the garbage, and they will break down almost 100%, like 92.6% in 2.5 years. But they're shelf stable, they're really high quality. And so if you are looking for glove purchases or looking for different ways to purchase more sustainably, that also might be an option for you. So I want to take a moment to go through a quick demo on how to find sustainable items. And this will be specifically for ODP or Office Depot or the Supra punch out. So I need to update my login again. Okay. Yep, I don't put it again. Okay, so if you do have access to PantherExpress, which is what we're gonna really go through today, and a lot of times I like to give events because not everybody purchases for sustainable products through like scientific purchases, or not everybody's going to be doing any like big products, but a lot of us purchase goods either through, this is taking a really long time. A lot of us will purchase goods for like events or for just for our office or break rooms or things like that. And so, or even just paper and office supplies. So purchasing through Supra is an easy way to increase your sustainable spend. So if you come to the PantherExpress, go down to Supra, who is also a diverse supplier, I want to highlight, and you go into their punch out, you'll see I don't know why this is not working for me. Okay, if you come into their punch out, you'll see a link to the green book that Emily highlighted earlier. This green book digital catalog, you can click here and it'll pop up with the green items, quote unquote green items that Supra and Office Depot have identified if you want to, just peruse that. Or let's say we're having an event or we want to restock our break room, and actually not restocking our break room, because I hope you're all using reusable items and glassware in your break rooms. But if you're having an event and you need disposable items and you really want to focus on compostable items instead, Emily, you can see my screen, right? You can see okay, just want to make sure. And let's say we're just going to look for plates up here. So on the left side, we're all familiar with how to like sort and search. But down here, what ODP and Office Depot has, they have the eco-conscious labels as well as eco-label standards. So you're able to select here, we want products that are either contain compostable items, or if you want to get more specific in one of these bio-based or sourcing labels, you feel free to do that. But if you want to look for plant-based materials, or if you want to look for biodegradable materials, you can always search in that way. And you can see that they all have this eco-conscious label tag here at the bottom of the item. So you can make your selection that way. And if you are looking for something, you'll probably see that eco-conscious label on things that you may be surprised to see. So a lot of us can look for like paper. We're looking for paper that's a percentage of recycled content, or if you're having an event, or if you need to purchase like plasticware but want to look for biodegradable items, this is another way that you can use the Supra punch out in order to sort and do a search in that way and find items that you want to purchase specifically for your event. Okay, so let's see, before I go back to another demo, I want to see, are there any questions specifically about this punch out or using PantherExpress doing your searches or anything having to do with purchasing that I've shown you thus far? Feel free to jump in or put your question in the chat. If not, I will just move on to another item that I want to highlight. Okay, so that's sustainable travel. If we have time, I can go through a demo of this for you. But I do want to actually, I'll just go ahead and do a demo because we're running a little bit ahead of time today. So I just wanted to highlight that Pitt has a plan for carbon neutrality, which I'm hopefully you've all heard of or read. Part of that plan is to reduce our air travel. And my responsibility of all of the items in that plan is specifically this reduction of air miles initiative. So I'm going to go back to my screen and we'll go into Concur. So this is another plug here for purchasing on contract. So Concur is our travel system that you're able to use if you're doing searches for trains, car rentals, or travel. And Concur is a really easy way for you to be able to have a good idea of what your, pardon? That's a question. Okay. An easy way for you to be able to identify what, making better choices. So now in Concur, you're able to see the carbon emissions specifically for a flight. So let's say we're going to travel from Pittsburgh to Atlanta in, I don't know, June for a conference. So June 12th through 16th. And we'll do a search. So this is for those of you who either book your own travel or if you make a request or have somebody book your travel for you. It's not necessarily something that they can, that they have to do, of course, but we would really encourage you to pay attention to this additional feature that was added, or you can make a request of them to sort and offer good selections for you based on this feature. So primarily what I wanted to share as the schedules are developing, you'll see down here, not only on the left in this area does it say the preferred airline for the University of Pittsburgh, but on the right, the Southwest is a really great job at this, but it'll show you obviously the duration of the travel, the type of airline or type of airplane that will be used, but also here it'll show the pounds of CO2. So for this flight in particular on American Airlines, it's a connecting flight to Atlanta that's going to be used 375 pounds of carbon. And so for you, as you're going through your travel, just be aware that that information is there. So you can if you have more flexibility in your travel, have a flexibility in when you leave, where you connect, or if you're able to fly direct, that's always better. So this direct flight through, I just lost it. But I think Southwest had a direct flight, which we'll talk about in just a second. But you can see the difference between this 374 pounds of carbon trip or this one through Southwest, which is 578 pounds of carbon, primarily because of where it stops, or even it could be the size of the plane. This Delta travel, which is a nonstop flight from here to Delta, is 333 pounds of carbon. So you're able to see, obviously the travel time is shorter because it's a direct flight, but also you're able to make a decision based on the pounds of CO2. And if this is something that your office or your department is trying to pay more attention to, this is a really easy way to track and capture that information. And as I mentioned before, it's really I want to highlight that we're able to purchase on contract or purchase through Concur because we're actually able to get the information on sustainability. So we're able to capture our carbon emissions from the airlines based on how the how the flights are purchased, which is interesting to me because for our data purposes, if we really want to know how much carbon the university is utilizing, we need to make sure that the information is really there. Southwest, for example, as I mentioned, I'm always really impressed with their technology. They're able to give us an estimate through Concur of what that the pounds of CO2 that will be used for your trip. But 24 hours after the trip, they're able to give us the actual pounds of CO2 because it depends on the weather, how many people were on that flight, the route that they had to take, or maybe reroute for your trip. So we're actually able to get really, really very specific information. And air travel is a huge emissions generator, not just for the university, but for the country. So if you're able to just promote purchasing through Concur and using that tool, that feature that was just added last summer. So all of everything that I'm showing you will be in the recording. And if you want additional demo or want to learn more about this, you can contact me and I'll put you in contact with the right folks in our office. So I would be remiss if I did not discuss diverse spend goals. So another part of my responsibility is not just to encourage us to purchase in a sustainable way, but sustainability also includes equity. And so the university has tracked diverse spend for many, many years. And we recently updated our diverse spend goals. So these goals coincide primarily with the plan for Pitt. And so these goals are for FY25. We're at the end of fiscal year 23. So we're at the midpoint. There'll be additional communication going out to the RCs about the goals that they've established. But I wanted to make sure I shared with you all, if you weren't aware, what the university's university-wide goals for diverse spend are. We have established spend for local goals for local spend as well for construction and non-construction. But the bottom two are the diverse spend goals. We've had goals for spend with diverse businesses. And I believe that goal was 10%. We've exceeded that goal for quite a long time. So probably 3 years before FY22. And so we've updated that from 12.5% to 15%. For non-construction, which is what most of you will be able to participate in. And then we have always tracked our Black-owned business spend goals, but we have not necessarily established a goal for that. So we have established a goal for Black-owned spend for the entire university, which is 5.5%. So as you are thinking of how you're spending your money, not just in a sustainable way, think about how you're spending it equitably as well. And I have additional information for you if you're interested in trying to figure out what tools are available to buyers and purchasers on campus as they sort and find and how they can embed extra steps in finding diverse businesses into their process of purchasing. That goes from finding consultants to purchasing swag and things like that. There's always opportunities there, and I'm happy to help you do the searches and help you build in those extra steps into your process to increase that and help us reach those goals. Okay, so the last thing that I really wanted to focus on was tips. So Emily, can feel free to jump in if you have some additional tips, or if anybody on the call today has any tips that you want to make sure that you share, or anything that you're doing in your offices. So in addition to the searches that I just showed you, searching for local and diverse companies is sustainable. Local is sustainable. Choosing EPEAT rated items, as I mentioned, for the Dell computers. Choosing paper made of either bagasse, which is a sugarcane waste product, or anything that's a non-tree paper. Looking for larger sizes with at least 30% recycled content, insisting on recycled ink and toner, and recycling the ink and toner cartridges that you have. And then looking up and doing a little bit more research on the other eco labels that will pertain to exactly what you are purchasing. Obviously, we've all heard a little bit about helium, even though the university has a really cool helium recapture process, which I can share the link for. But generally, when labs use helium, they just emit it or release it into the atmosphere, which nobody likes. So think twice about getting balloons and things like that. Think differently about how you celebrate, I guess, which everybody loves balloons, so it's a little bit of a bummer, but we're all trying to be better here. Rethinking styrofoam, which is also very convenient, but Pitt is moving to a styrofoam-free campus. And then also removing bottled water. So if you have visitors in your office or things like that, try to give them glasses or water that comes in different containers. I already showed you a little bit of how to search for compostable plates and cutlery. There's zero waste events. There's so many resources out there, and Emily can talk a little bit more about zero waste events, and then zero waste offices and labs as well, or green offices and green labs. But I will talk a little bit just to finish this out, participating in K-Cup recycling programs through ODP and Supra. Emily talked about reusable signage already. And then I also wanted to mention consolidating your orders. A lot of our suppliers don't necessarily have a minimum order requirement, but ordering something in the morning and something in the evening, you're able to do that. But if you're able to plan a little bit better, consolidating the order so that these comes in fewer packages, fewer trips to campus, it just will really help on the sustainability side, and it will help our suppliers in their delivery as well. So Emma, do you want to talk a little bit about green offices and green labs to close us up?
Yeah. So in part of my role on the engagement side, a suite of programs that we have on campus to help you guys engage in the sustainability initiatives that Jennifer has been detailing here, along with lots of other initiatives on campus. We have the Green Office, Green Lab, and Green Host programs. We also have a Green Resident and Green Floor program that are focused on the student side. But the Green Office program has been around since, I believe, 2017, I want to say. And it's essentially a designation program to recognize the sustainable best practices and habits that you keep in your regular everyday office operations. And we actually have a webinar coming up next Tuesday, a similar lunch and learn 12 to 1 on how to get started in that program. If it's something that you think you and your office mates would be interested in, just at the QR code there. And I'll grab a link as well. The Green Lab program uses a lot of these different sustainable supplier initiatives that Jennifer was talking about with Thermo Fisher and our scientific suppliers. So, that's a program that similarly recognizes in the particular and like special uses of lab materials and the energy and water and ventilation needed for lab spaces, how to be most efficient and sustainable in those ways as well. And then the Green Host program, if you are an office that regularly hosts events, whether internally or externally facing, the Green Host program is actually a certification and quiz that anyone in your office can take. Usually it's best if it's like an admin or someone who regularly would order materials through hospitality, through the EMS system, things like that, in order to get those events up and running. So the Green Host is a series of videos. I think there's about 4 of them, and they take like maybe 20 minutes to watch. You take a quick quiz, and then you are a certified Green Host and get access to all kinds of resources through hospitality and dining to be able to request zero waste materials for your events, zero waste kits through the Student Office of Sustainability to help you sort your compostable and recyclable materials, and lots of other resources that way. So yeah, if you're interested in any of learning a bit about all those different Green Suite programmings, but Green Office in particular, that is something we will be focusing on next week. So here's a little bit more info about that program dropped in the chat. And then for the event, let me grab that as well. Here's a link for that. All right.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Sure. I feel like we kind of sped through that, wanting to make sure that we were respectful of everyone's time. I did notice that I had some colleagues on the line as well. So if any of you, the procurement specialist or anybody from the procurement team, have any sustainable purchasing tips or experiences on your projects that you'd like to share with the group, feel free. to jump in here. You don't have to. I'm putting you on the spot, but just give you some space. All right, in the chat, I see some questions about, okay, Emily answered the question about the K-cycle program through Supra and ODP. Thank you, Emily, for including that link. And looks like Kimberly said she's been using polycarbon plastic since the fall. Oh, so great. So you can reach out to Kim if you have questions about polycarbon or how that's being used. You'll also see both SW safety and polycarbon featured on the Pitt Purchasing, Purchase Pay and Travel website under supplier spotlights. They will both be highlighted during this month, during Earth Month. And I will find that link and put a chat out for everybody. But if there aren't any other questions, I don't think anybody's going to be sad to leave 10 minutes early. But I can stick around, Emily, if you want to stick around afterwards to answer questions directly. If not, then I will thank you all for your participation. I hope this was helpful in some way. And let us know how we can, what additional information you want to hear from us in the future so we can improve this for the next time.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.